My name is Efrain Reyes. I live in Orange County, California, and I'm 30 years old. I work in a nonprofit company. I actually support schools with behavioral health. So my job is to help run a program called the Strengthening Families Program. And this helps families kind of communicate better, bond better, all that good stuff. I've been married for 8 years. I actually celebrated my 8-year anniversary on Tuesday, so that was really good. And then
Congrats.
thank you, appreciate it. And then I have one daughter, only one right now. She's 3 years old. So that's kind of like a little bit of my background and what I do.
Cool. Now, is that in the public school system?
Yes, so it's a public school system here in Orange County. It's a extra support for the schools. So people or teachers or principals or even the parents can sign up, right, for this. It's a free program. It's a 10-week program that we work with both the kids and the parents. Oftentimes with different programs is just the kids or just the parents. But this program is kind of doing both of them to make sure that they're both successful.
Okay. And who's funding that?
So it's funded through the county, actually. So there's a grant that they provided, is a mental health grant a couple years back, and my company put in a bid for it, and they got the money. So we get money from there, and then we put out this program to the schools.
Interesting. So is it like you guys are just funded for X amount of time, or is it you guys are paid like per kid or parent that comes through the program?
No, so we're funded through for like usually 5 years, right? We'll do like a contract for 5 years, but then within those 5 years, we have to meet certain goals. Like we have to serve certain amount of parents, certain amount of kids. Our surveys, we do surveys. Our surveys have to look good, and then depending on how we do is whether they extend or modify or whatever they do with the contract.
And is that just you?
No, it's actually, so that's only part of the program, right? I work with a team of 3 people, and then there's another team that works just with the students, and that's during the class time. And it's also, working with behavioral health. They teach emotional, social emotional lessons, such as like bullying or anti-bullying, I should say, empathy, how to manage your anger, how to manage your feelings, things like that. So like kind of social skills that maybe kids need a little bit extra help with.
Okay. And so so a kid gets referred into your program through whichever method. Are you guys just doing like an analysis and creating a program for them, or do you guys like put that every kid through the same program of like, here's the 10 weeks, this is what we work on week 1, this is what we work on week 2, or is it tailored to where, hey, this kid's acting out in this way, so let's just focus on this one thing?
Exactly. So yeah, it's more tailored. So for example, let's say there's a kid that is showing more aggression, right? So we have like kind of like specific lessons for that type of kid, or we have a kid that need a little bit more self-esteem, boost of self-esteem. We have some lessons for that. So it's kind of tailored for everybody, for all the kids that are.
How long have you been doing that?
I'm going to be, this is my actually 4 years in September.
Okay.
Yeah.
What'd you do before then?
I've been working with kids in behavioral health for the last 6 years. Before that, I was in restaurants. I was a bartender and a server. Just got me through college and all that. And then I started working in behavioral health. I also worked with. So when I became a father, I got really interested in parenting and fatherhood. And that's kind of like what led me to start working with the Strengthening Families program. And also with that, I wanted to find support for myself of just kind of being a good father, right? What does a good father look like? So
Mhm.
what I did is I looked for different companies, and I found a company here in Anaheim that is called Dads Matter. And I actually went through that program myself. It's a 16-week program, kind of helping you to understand that the difference that you can make in children's lives as a dad, kind of like showing like, when a dad is present, kids are way more successful in different all areas of life. And I loved it. I love learning about fatherhood. I love learning about how I can make a difference, how I can be a better dad. So I actually, at the end of the program, I gave him my resume. It's like, hey, here's my resume. If you guys ever need a facilitator, let me know. So after that, a couple months later, the director called me, and I actually worked for Dads Matter for about a year after I started doing some other stuff. So I've been kind of like in behavioral health for the last 6-7 years, working with kids, teens, parents, couples, so like all that stuff.
So these the last 4 years spent in the Orange County Public School System, right? With the
Mhm.
uh, that family initiative. I forget what it was called. Sorry,
It's called the Strengthening Families program.
Strengthening Families. That's right.
Yeah, so
So
that's
last 4 years you
actually
spend that.
but during that time I have also, I've been working with that company, and I also work with Dads Matter at the same time. So I did two jobs.
Got it. So
Hmm.
the kids you're seeing through the Strengthening Families project.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess what are your typical scenarios there? What are they coming into your program for? Like what was the reason that someone suggested they go through this program?
Um, in reality, the program can benefit any family. As long as they're looking to better their communication, bonding, and things like that. But what typically these kids are referred for can be several different things. It can be, absences in school. It can be low academic performance. It can be misbehavior in the classroom. So with this program, we kind of, help the family, help the parents, gain some parenting skills, help the kids gain some social, emotional skills, and kind of create more protective factors for the whole family, so they can be more successful, right? So in this program, they can be referred through a teacher, or it can be referred by administration, or even the own parents can say, hey, I want to
Is it ever
participate.
is it ever mandatory or is it strictly voluntary?
No, it's not. I want to say mandatory, because everything's voluntary, but they do kind of recommend, or refer certain families. So it's my job to kind of call the families and say, hey, you were referred through blah, 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 and this is what you will gain from the program. Would you like to sign up? Would you like to get more information about it? And stuff
What
like
percentage do you think are taking advantage of that program versus are declining to do it?
that. Very low percentage, to be honest. So
I can see that
I
because it would almost seem like almost a little bit insulting to a parent, even if they need it or not.
Mhm.
That you telling me I'm not doing a good enough job and I need to take classes for this. I mean, or
Right,
they're just a lifestyle of which they genuinely maybe don't care. Um,
right. It can be. Some parents do take it that way. We try to make it in a way that it's just like a after school family club, because we're
sure.
not we're not like teaching like class style classes, right? Like, hey, you need to learn this, you need to memorize this and this is the quiz that you're gonna get. No, it's like, okay, it's social skills, right? So every night we actually have dinner for the families. So we kind of provide that environment where they can have dinner together as a family.
Mhm.
Surprisingly, that alone creates so much power in the family. Just having dinner as a family, being able to have that space to talk and connect with each other, check in with how their day's been. It's so powerful. But with a lot of families, with technology and just the way that we live nowadays, that can be very difficult. If the parents are working two jobs, or the kids are playing video games and stuff like that. So that's how we start every session, right? We start with having dinner as a family, and like, how does that help you be a better family? And it's not that you're a bad parent, or it's just that we can all learn something new.
So we're not getting the high percentage of people who are being offered this, or the program's being extended to. So it's a low percentage of enrollment. What do you think? I guess what are the factors that could possibly improve that more people would take advantage of it? Like, are you getting feedback into the reasons why they're saying no, or deciding not to go through with it?
That's a really good question. What I've noticed is that since we are like a third-party company, when there is a staff member in the school that I'm working with, usually it's like a principal, administrator. If those people have really good relationships with the community, we get a high percentage of families there, right? Because I'm coming
Like
in as
some
a
familiarity.
yeah. So I'm coming in as a third party. I'm telling them, hey, take this program. This is going to be great. But I'm just a stranger to a lot of them, right? But if there's a middle person, that is there, and they're like, hey, I know this, usually like a community liaison, right? I know this person. I trust this person. If this person recommends something, I know that it's gonna benefit me because they recommended things before. So that really kind of like makes the difference in what I've seen with our program. So definitely that's a big thing.
Have your rates of acceptance, or have you guys been able to improve that amount the longer you've been in the school program? So now going on year 4 versus year 1.
Definitely, yeah. So that's what we work on, creating those relationships with the school staff, kind of being involved not just in the program, but having the school recognize us for different things. So, for example, we'll do like parent night or back to school night. Well, not anymore right now because there's
Sure,
no
yeah.
like live school. But when we used to go, we would go like back to school night, pass out information. Maybe if the program was going to start in a certain school, then we will pass out that. So like that, just kind of creating those relationships to have families kind of trust us and know who we are. It's kind of like any business, right? As you start, nobody knows who you are, but then after a while, people even recommend people to the program, or even we've had like families that have done the program more than once because they just enjoyed it so much, and then they just want to take it again.
Sure. So where do y'all guys meet?
We usually meet at the schools. So the school provides that facility for us, and then
So you have to have enough people to go to every school.
right. So we don't. So we do each. A program every day. So for example, Monday we're at one school. Tuesday we're at a different school. Wednesday we're at a different school. Thursday we're at a different school. So we
How many
kind of.
how many schools are in that county?
Oh, there's a lot. Yeah, we
Oh,
definitely
Orange
won't
County's
be
huge,
able
isn't it?
to. Yeah, Orange County is huge, and they have different school districts, so we can't service everybody.
Okay.
So it's kind of like we try
So
to
you have to pick the schools with the demographics that fit your program.
yeah. So we pick demographics. We try to go to different areas that we haven't been to before. So there's a lot of thought that goes into like which schools are going to get this program. We try to if the school district kind of had the program already, we try to go to a different school district. And the cool thing is like you don't have to just go to that school to join the program. As long as you're in the school district, you can technically come from a different school and just go through the program. So we try to advertise it as a
Yeah,
district
makes
level.
sense. So I'm just kind of curious now, just for my own knowledge. So in Florida, this
Yeah.
was like 20, 30 years ago, they started doing the school lunch program and the school breakfast program for lower income kids. And they were
Hmm.
noticing that itself, like by itself, improved attendance rates of schools like dramatically, like huge number,
Right.
simply because there were so many families that now these kids were wanting to go to school because they knew they were getting breakfast, they knew they were getting lunch, so at least
Right.
2 meals were covered. To whereas that
That.
wasn't necessarily guaranteed at home, and I guess it
Hmm.
eased a lot of you know fears or burdens on some of the families. But so I know that was a like tremendously successful thing that was
Yeah.
implemented. So I guess, have you guys used food and does it work? Obviously, you guys are doing the dinner, but have you guys put it out there almost like as a marketing call of like, hey, we'll feed you,
Yeah.
show up, bring your family,
No.
and use that as a sales pitch almost.
Yeah. I tried. And we definitely tell them. But I'm not sure. I think I had to look into it. But what my boss told me is that we can't really do that because the program has to be kind of like you have to come into the program wanting to get the knowledge, not just the food. But no, yeah, definitely that helps a ton when families, they're getting a dinner and for their whole family. Um, we have to get creative with that because we have specific funds for that, and sometimes they're not that great, so we have to kind
Yeah,
of like get creative with that. But we do try to find different grants that will help us kind of help with that. So last year we actually got a $10,000 grant, and we kind of just used that for dinners, right? And we were able to buy better quality dinners, and we were able to advertise, hey, this week we're gonna have Italian night, and we're gonna actually have some good Italian food. Or this week we're gonna have Mexican night, we're gonna have tacos or whatever that thing would be, and like kind of like use that as a sales pitch as well.
okay, cool. For those families, there's a lot of dads showing up, or are these a lot of single mom households, or single
Hmm.
dad households, or foster
Yeah,
system kids? What are you guys seeing?
that's a really good question. Most that I see is moms, right? I love when dads come to my classes. I encourage dads to come. I let moms to kind of push dads to go. But it seems that dads do have a harder time. I'm not sure if it's job situation or just being open for these type of programs, but they do have a harder time coming to these groups. Even when I was working at Dads Matter, that was a big thing. It was really hard to get dads to actually come together and talk about these you know topics and stuff like that. I'm not too sure exactly what it is. I think it's the multiple factors.
It's testosterone.
Probably, yeah, definitely. I think that has to do a lot with it.
What's the change life?
So I
Sure.
started this company. It's a life coaching company, um, and I want to create programs for families, for dads, and for business owners and things like that to help them just have a better happier family or happier life.
So the kids that are coming through the program, what are the most common things that they're struggling with, like that are problematic? Is it anxiety, like depression type stuff? Is it bullying? Is it just
Mm-hmm.
being able to handle the workload, or just home life? What's probably the most predominant
Um,
issue?
Yeah. So another thing that I kind of want to let you know is with our program, we actually service two populations. We service the elementary school population, and then we service the middle or high school. So the kids, the elementary school population is kids that are 6 to 11, and then the other one is that our kids are 12 to 16. So it kind of looks different on both populations. Even like, for example, for the teenagers, they can be like they're already starting to use drugs, or they're already starting to sell drugs. um, they have a lot of anger issues. They have maybe ran away, or they have gotten in fights in their school. So that kind of looks different than the elementary school, where sometimes the elementary school, they're just kind of having a really hard time focusing in class, or they tend to have anger outbursts, um, or maybe more like anxiety type of behaviors. So it looks a little bit different for those two populations.
And so that anger type stuff, where is that coming from? Like, what is it usually based based from?
They feel like they're not quite accepted in their home. It can be like that their parents don't listen to them, or that their parents just don't have that time to create that quality time. So they want to, sometimes it's just kind of like attention, right? Attention seeking behavior when they do these anger outbursts. And they want to say, hey, mom, dad, like I'm here, like
So basically,
pay attention to me.
home life is not on point.
Right, yeah. Home life for sure not on point. It can be
Okay.
divorce, it can be homelessness, it can be multiple things. Yeah.
And that's in the older group, the 12 to 18, right?
Yeah, most of the time on the older
Okay.
ones, that's where we see that more anger, more behaviors like
And
that.
so, and so are you guys working with the kid to kind of deal with those things, like, hey, this is life and you got to deal with it? Or is it, and I'm sure it's both, but, or is it more
Hmm.
working with the parents of, okay, you've created an environment here that kind of
Right.
sucks for this kid. And so he's acting out.
Yeah.
So we'll work with the acting out part, but like, y'all need to get your crap together at home.
Yeah, it's kind of both, right? So like I'm actually facilitate the parents portion. So I work with the parents separately from the kids, and then there's another facilitator that works with the teenagers, and kind of like we talk about similar issues, right? So for example, one night we'll talk about what does positive communication look like. That's what I talk with the parents. And then the other facilitator will talk about what does positive communication look like for teens, and how do you talk to your parent, what is good, what is not so good. And then we come back together and we create this, we have a family portion where we create different activities that we practice these skills, right? And a lot of it is actually games that we practice communication, or like board games or things like that you're kind of forced to communicate in a certain way. So
So
we'll be.
so when you say there's not the communication's not happening the right way at home,
Mhm,
is it just conversations are being avoided?
mhm.
It's just everything's
Yeah.
just in anger and everyone's just yelling at each other. So because I'm trying to think of, I understand the concept of like positive communication games and, like, doing the games and like you can
Yeah.
create a conversation, but how does that relate then to everyday life at home? Because I'm just trying to think how I would receive that. I mean, we communicate as a family all the time, but I've never
Mhm.
thought about a tactic to communicate. We just talk. We just you know we discuss all aspects of our lives. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, like in practicality, what you guys are dealing with, what you're seeing.
We have to understand where they're coming from, right? A lot of these families are very low income, low educational families. I'm sure for maybe your family, this was a norm, right? This is a norm. We just talk. Um, but for a lot of families, they don't have these conversations, or these conversations can be negative, or they can be destructive, right? So by doing it in a game is a way that we help them understand that, we can practice this, and also kind of creates a less stressful environment, right? Like, hey, we're just learning, we're playing, we're having a good time.
Sure.
And then that can lead into the home life, right? We kind of have these, I wouldn't say homework, but we have like kind of like, all right, this week I want you to work on giving each other compliments, and like, let's see who can give each other the most compliments. So like
Got it.
that little thing that they didn't do before can create a big difference in their home life, in their environment, right?
Got it. Okay. So just not enough positive things are being said at home, and it kind of has a negative effect on any communication being had, because who wants to talk to somebody that is just always crapping on each other?
Right, yeah, positive
Okay.
communication, and then not recognizing each other's feelings, right? So
Sure.
we're kind of like, parents are busy, they just want to get things done, and their kid comes and wants to tell them something that might be really important to them, but that's not on their parents' mind, so they brush them off. The kid comes again, so it's a pattern, right? It's a pattern that we
Okay.
create, and it's a pattern that we try to change and help parents understand that these.
So not having the conversation is also part of the problem. Pushing it
Exactly.
aside, brushing it under the rug, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Or not knowing how to have the conversation, or ask the right questions to your kid, right? Like, hey, I see that you seem upset, like, let's talk about it. Or just even listening to the kid, right?
Yeah. Do you guys ever cover like how to react to like stunning news or things like that?
Well, like, for example, for the teen portion, we talk about sexuality, we talked about um, romantic relationships and stuff like that. So one of the things that I cover is like, how do you answer tough questions? So I have
Mm,
like this little script that kind of tells you like, you know, make sure that you recognize, or first of all, thank them for asking you that question. Recognize where they're coming from. Try to understand their background and stuff like that. So like, it kind of like leads you to like, how do you respond to those type of questions, right? Or
sure.
situations. Yeah.
Because I
So
think because I think if a kid comes to you with something, whether it's sex, drugs, relationships, or whatever it is, something more stunning,
yeah,
where it shocks you a little bit, you just didn't expect it. I've
yeah,
always felt like the way you react as a parent is kind of critical of you to kind of stay calm and like absorb it and intellectually react to it, other than like shock of, oh my gosh, what happened? And kind of
yeah.
flip out a little bit, because that kind of like, because then it kind of like makes the kid feel like crap, or like they did something wrong, or maybe they didn't,
Exactly.
and it can kind of scar them from coming to you again, because you react like a crazy person a little bit,
Oh
and
yeah,
or maybe overreact a little bit, where you're not like the wise counsel anymore.
exactly.
You're the drama queen.
Exactly. Yeah, you just hit a really important point right now. Like, the way that you respond to these situations is going to create how they feel about it, right? Are they going to come back to you later on when they have another situation? Right now, maybe kids are younger, and they're coming to you because, I don't know, whatever reason. But later on, when they get older, it might be something bigger, right? And
Sure.
then that's when it
Building that
really makes.
foundation of trust.
Exactly, yeah, that's when it really makes the difference. But I feel that a lot of parents don't understand this concept, and we are reacting. I know I was, or I am still sometimes, so I have to kind of remind myself, right? I need to kind of just be a calm, like, model what you would want your kid to do, you know what I mean?
And so that was the older side. What about the younger side?
The younger side, in terms of in terms of
What are the biggest issues you guys are dealing with?
just I feel like the lack of quality time will be one of the biggest issues to
Yeah,
just
feeling
create
neglected.
kind of, yeah, I guess feeling neglected. So they so they start to act out at school or act out at home. It kind of goes back to not being listened to, or yeah, kind of neglect. I mean,
So,
go ahead.
so just I want to get away from the kid perspective for a little bit. So you're talking a lot
Yeah.
with the parents. So what are the problems the parents are facing? What are the struggles they're having that they're looking for resolution on or don't know how to handle?
So a lot of the parents, they're hardworking parents, right? So they're working super hard. They're already stressed with maybe multiple jobs. So this creates a already, if you're bringing that stress to your home, it creates another stressful environment right there. And then not having the communication skills to kind of listen to your kids, or not having the time. I mean, I feel like they do have the time, but maybe they don't put the time into just having a quality time with their kids and things like that. um, so I talk about how to manage your stress, right, as a parent. I talk about positive communication. I talk about how to be a good listener. Surprisingly, a lot of us are a lot of parents are not great listeners. They think just because I'm the parent, I'm right all the time, or I should be right. But it's not about being right, it's just being understood, you know what I mean? So different things like that. What else do we teach? I'm blanking out right now, but yeah, things like that, just like social emotional skills.
They're stressed at home and they feel like they don't have enough time. I don't know how deep in discussions you get with everybody versus it being more kind of uh, you know maybe more teaching and less
Hmm.
counseling, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Hmm.
I feel like a lot of people say they don't have time and spend a crap ton of time fiddling with their phone, playing video games, and know everything that's going on in reality TV shows and know
Hmm.
everything that's going on in celebrity lives
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
are sports fanatics that seem to have plenty of time to follow sports, but they can't make time for their freaking kids. Um,
Right.
are you seeing that, or are these situations where they just work all day? There is no entertainment or stress relief. It's just work, 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 work,
Um,
and try and spend time with kids.
a little bit of both, but I do work with a lot of Latino and Hispanic populations. So a lot of them, they just are like working. I feel like we have a Latino and a Hispanic culture. We have this idea that we immigrated to this country to have a better life for our kids. So we have to work, 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 and create that. But what we don't realize is that by working so much, you're kind of neglecting, what's most important, right? Which is your kids. So then that's like something that kind of bites you in the ass at the end of the day. You're trying to work and provide the best or a better life for your kids, but at the same time, your kids don't, maybe they don't need all that um, you know all the things that you buy them, but they need more of your time. They need more of your just being empathetic with them and things like that. So that's what I see a lot, because I do work with a lot of Latino Hispanic population.
So when you get into those conversations, do you start to, I've never looked at the numbers of somebody who's working 2 or 3 jobs, but do you get into budgets and financial management and those kind of things?
Not with my program, we don't.
Okay.
But I think that is a really good point. I did do that with That's Matter. So there was one week where we actually focused on financial health and stuff like that, and we had a presenter come and present, different topics on that. But yeah, that is I think that's a really good point that should be addressed in
Right.
these type of programs.
So in the same way, the time's wasted, money being wasted on expenses, just buying things you don't really need, or wasting
Right.
money on stupid stuff. And then if you just
Hmm.
cut those things out, you just don't need to. You don't need to make as much. Maybe you won't be as stressed out or things like that. So, but I've never really
Hmm.
looked at someone's numbers who's working, 2 or 3 jobs to support the family. So I've never quite understood what that would look like if it's truly a kind of like not life or death, but we have to do this way because we're just not making it
Hmm. Hmm.
otherwise, or if it is just a lot of reckless spending, and then it just seems like you have to live that way, but you just actually wasting a ton.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. We tend to maybe waste money in areas that doesn't need to be wasted, and then also with the immigrant population, they are getting maybe a lot of them under, paid really really low, so they do have to work, several jobs, especially living in Orange County. It's really expensive to live here. Um, so there's a lot. I think financial health is the point that we're trying to talk about, right? Do we really need these extra things, or can we spend this money in a different way, or can we just have this money to create that quality time, right?
Sure.
Because I feel like it's not the lack of time or it's the lack of money, it's just the lack of using those resources correctly.
Well, and you mentioned like some of the people you're working with. So some of them, it is kind of necessary. They have to work these multiple jobs, and that's just survival. That's not frivolous spending. Um,
Right.
because Orange County is expensive, because of the area where they live. I've always been curious to that, what the mentality is, because if I was in that situation, um,
Hmm.
yeah, focus on it, improving income, obviously, but even without that thought, I would think, why not move somewhere else where you don't have those issues, where maybe
Yeah.
pay is better, or at least cost of living is not, one of the most expensive in the country. Like, why not
Yeah.
move? Like, why are people staying there?
Yeah, that's an those are awesome questions. I think I mean there's multiple factors, but I can just speak to like my culture and what I know for like Hispanic and Latinos. And for us is we have a very strong sense of family, so we kind of stick together. Um, so here in Southern California, there's a huge Latino population, right? So we feel that there's like support. There's people. You can go to the local market and kind of get the things that you want or you need. So there's a sense of home right here in Southern California. I mean, and then to move out, I actually thought about moving out of California because yeah, it's super expensive to live in Orange County. And then the thought about like I'm going away from my family, right? I'm going away from my loved ones and my support system and stuff like that. Those are things that I think about, right? When it's like, oh, should I move or should I not move? So it's a different, I think, mentality. And I'm just saying this is kind of like where for more like Hispanic and Latino. I'm not sure if I can't
Sure.
speak for everybody,
Because you're not
but
saying
that's
you're not saying actual blood family, grandma, grandpa, aunts, uncles. You're just saying like the community is almost like a family.
yeah,
Is that what I'm?
yeah, yeah. The community is like a family. The local market person, and just like people around you. So uh, it, it, I feel like a lot of especially I feel like not like second generation immigrants, but like first generation. They want to kind of stick together to like support each other and stuff like that.
Hmm. Gosh, it almost seems like their strength is kind of their weakness as well.
Yeah, a little bit, definitely. So it's gonna be really interesting to see how some of these things change as we are limited by that interaction, right? Because we have that sense of like family and sense of community, but now we like with this whole like pandemic is like we can't like interact with each other. So that's going to be like, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of secondary issues with that.
I feel like we're talking a lot of like labor-based jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm from Florida, to where like a lot of labor jobs, like if you're in labor, construction, landscaping, mowing lawns, just kind of pressure washing, even just handymen in general, like you make a killing. At least in
Yeah.
Florida, you make a freaking killing because uh, apparently Americans just don't want to work hard anymore. Like we've been told it's beneath us. Like you shouldn't push a lawnmower because that's beneath you. You should work some white collar job where you're going to be miserable from 9 to 5. So I feel like a lot of those labor based jobs, like the value of them and the amount you can get paid has really risen lately. Is that not happening
Yeah.
in California?
No, yeah, I think it is happening, but
Because those used to be like really crappy, low paid jobs, and now they're becoming, I mean, pretty daggone expensive, just because
yeah.
there's so few people that do it anymore.
Yeah, no, I think there's people that make a lot of money and through handyman or plumbing or whatever it is, construction, landscaping. Um, but I also feel that there's there's a lack of balance, right? How much you like expend in your business compared to how much you spend in like creating a good family life, right? So maybe the focus is building this business and creating freedom for your family, but at the same time is like you might be neglecting your family because you're working long hours or you're putting too much into the business. Now that your family or your relationships are kind of like struggling, right?
Yeah,
So like
and
like
I'm
we
guilty,
st-
I'm guilty of that. I mean, so if we're switching the conversation from kind of lower class, poverty stricken, to more
Mhm,
middle class, upper class income
mhm,
levels, then yeah, I think there's a lot of situations where careers maybe need to take a back burner sometimes. To where the
mhm.
business needs to take a back burner. You don't have to take every opportunity. You don't have to drive as hard because you've got that 20-year window, or really less than that, with kids and
Yeah,
with your family, to make that more of a priority sometimes. I'm
right.
certainly guilty of, there were times in my life where my kids didn't even see me some days, just because when I was up before they were awake, and I didn't get back home until after they were asleep. But then on the flip, those were times where we were driving hard. Then on the flip side, there were times where I was there at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it's almost like Dad didn't have to go. Uh,
Yeah, for sure.
so we kind of found, if you want to call it balance in that way, it was just a much bigger picture. It was over the course of years. So there were
Mhm.
like 3, 4, 5 month periods where I was driving hard, and then 3, 4, 5 month periods where I was able to kind of take my foot off the pedal for a while, and make family a focus. So it
Mhm.
wasn't a daily balance or a weekly balance, but more of a yearly
Right.
balance. But I do see a lot of that in those income levels. I just don't know. I just don't know enough about, like you said, the Latino culture and
Mhm.
the lower incomes or under the table incomes,
Yeah,
things like that, to
the
where I
immigrant
just don't know how
culture.
much of that is actual two job, 80, 90 hours a week, and we're surviving, um,
Mhm.
versus, okay, maybe we don't have to work 80, 90 hours a week, uh,
Mhm.
because we make enough, we're just spending too much. Or
Yeah.
that's where I just speak out of turn there because I don't know.
Yeah. No, and I think that within our Latino Hispanic community, the financial health topic is very needed, and it might not be that it might be that we're making money. It's just that we're not managing it correctly.
Sure.
We're spending it in different ways that are not beneficial to us, or just even like, for example, buying kids video games or excessive video games that you might spend that money somewhere else, right? Taking them to the park and buying some food and just spending that
Sure.
time with
Because
them.
if you're $10 an hour picking crops out of a field,
Mm-hmm.
and a game is $50 to buy,
Yeah,
and you just had to sit 5 hours in a field picking
exactly.
crop to buy a video game for a kid. And I'm sure long run, you flip that around. Don't pick for 5 hours and spend time with kids.
So yeah, and I feel like, for example, like that video game situation, right? So parents is like, okay, it's not necessarily that I want my kid to grow up healthy, but I just want my kid to. I just don't want my kid to bother me right now because I'm tired and I'm stressed. So I'm just gonna buy him something that's gonna keep him, um, you know, just quiet or just occupied for more time, right? Like video games is a big one. Like buying kids a phone at an early age, that's another one. Or just giving your phone. I'm guilty of that. I give my daughter, my 3-year-old daughter, my phone, when she's kind of going crazy and stuff like that. But then I had to catch myself, like, okay, like what are the habits that I'm creating, right? So I try to kind of on the flip side, spend more time with her and like do a puzzle or read her a book, those little things that I think are super important that sometimes we kind of forget about.
Yeah, actual person to person bonding.
For sure.
Yeah. Um, as I'm super curious, I want to find a white paper on that and read it. I'm fascinated by that right now. As weird
By
as
what?
that sounds.
Which one?
The lower the first generation immigrant that's super low income, working 2-3 jobs.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to how much of that is necessary, um, versus how much could be resolved by better financial management.
Right. No, yeah,
I'm just
definitely. I
curious about
think.
it. Because I genuinely think if it's about survival and you're working 89, if dad is working his butt off 80, 90 hour weeks, 100 hour weeks, whatever it is, um, and he's not spending a lot of time at home, but it's all about survival and the family knows that, like we're barely getting food on the table and roof above our head, dad's taking care
Yeah.
of us the best he can picking crops, then
Yeah.
I I think that family kind of turned out okay because everyone kind of knows what dad's sacrificing,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? He's not going out to the bars and drinking. He's out there busting his butt working, and we're barely making it as it is. And there's not frivolous spending. Versus if he's, and that's why I change my tone on it when it's middle class, upper class, because then there's plenty. Now we're just talking excess. We're talking building for the future. But
Yeah.
when it's about survival, I think the dynamics change, because the whole family understands that this isn't neglect. This isn't choosing something over me. This is, holy crap, dad's really, really sacrificing just so we can live.
Yeah. I think that what I see what's going on is, maybe let's just say there was a big wave of immigrants coming into the U.S. from whatever Latin American country. So these parents are working, a lot of long hours and things like that, right? And they don't have the time to, you know, be with their kids. So their kids are out maybe in the streets, or maybe they're trying to look for that parent or the acceptance somewhere else. It can be gangs and can be drugs, um, and now these kids are having kids. So these kids that are maybe don't have those, they didn't see what a good parent looks like, what a good relationship looks like within their maybe family. These kids are having kids, right? And now they don't have those skills to be a parent or be a father and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So then they're kind of falling into another cycle, right? But I feel like a lot of times we don't realize that. We don't realize that this is a cycle that's gonna continue unless we kind of bring some awareness to it.
We went on that long tangent because we were asking what the parents were feeling, or what the
Oh,
parents were saying, what their biggest struggles were. And so it seemed to be time and stress, right?
yeah, I didn't even realize that then. But that was a really good conversation. So,
Yeah, yeah,
that
no, no. So is that's the biggest thing we're hearing from parents? Is there anything else we're hearing from the parent side?
So another thing about this population is there's actually a language barrier, right? So the parents are coming in here into the US, they're mostly speaking Spanish, right? Now they're having kids here and they grow up, the kids are actually speaking more English than Spanish.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of times the parents don't learn English, I'm sorry, and the kids don't fully understand Spanish. And it's funny to say, but sometimes the parents and the kids don't even understand each other because they're not speaking the same language. So that's another
How does that happen when
factor.
you grow up in the home? Was like if you're raising a child, I understand the school system teaches
Yeah,
them English. You're not learning that,
right.
but you're at
Yeah,
home speaking
yeah.
Spanish.
So the kid might know,
How the heck is that even possible?
it happens. I see it all the time. So the kid might
Bizarre.
know like basic Spanish, right? He might know like just conversational Spanish. But when it comes to
Mhm.
like deeper issues or trying to have a longer, more complex conversation, then they might not know like how to have that conversation. The parents are not speaking English, so then there's literally a language barrier between the kids and their parents. So that's another interesting
Th-
factor
th-
that
there- and there's only one person to blame for that happening. That's mom and dad. I guess people.
yeah, no,
I
for
mean,
sure.
the fact that they're not teaching their kid the language that they speak,
Mm-hmm.
that blows my mind. I haven't heard of that before.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
blows my mind.
It is yeah, interesting. I when I first encountered that, I was like, what? Like, how do you guys communicate? Like, how do you guys talk to each other? How do you guys like do things? But yeah, that's another factor with this specific population. Um, that
So it's like the school system's raising their kids more than they are.
in a way, yeah, in a way, a lot of these parents, they have like the school that is, they go in at 7:30 in the morning. They usually get out like 2:30, and then they have an after school program, right? So they'll have like boys and girls club or whatever, and then they're getting out like at 5 or 6, right? 5:30 maybe.
I'm okay with Boys and Girls Club
Hmm.
because I'm familiar with them and I know what they do. And the demographics they're reaching out to. Um, Man, I'm just so not okay with having kids and then just turn them over to the school district for the next 12 years. Let them do all the raising.
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of parents feel this way, that you know schools are there to kind of like teach kids all these different skills, but in reality, that foundation has to be set at home, right? It has to be set at home, and then maybe um, supported at school, right? But it's kind of being the other way around sometimes.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, schools should be the complement to the
Exactly.
learning that's happening at
Yeah,
home and not
definitely.
the other way around. My goodness.
Fathers have such an important role, and they don't realize it sometimes. They don't realize how important a father can be in their daughter's life and their son's life, and just in general as a family, right? And kind of putting that ego aside of what a man should be or do or whatever, and being a father and being a family man, that is gonna help your family be a healthier family. So I'm just so surprised with what you're doing. um, you're traveling around US right now,
Yep.
and then what is your like your goal with this company that you're starting, or you started?
Uh, well, the goal is just to reach as many people as possible. Uh, the What happens down the road, we'll see. We are making zero attempts to monetize this right now, just because we don't have that kind of following. You need to be pretty large in numbers
Mm-hmm.
to be putting content out for free. And really, the way to monetize at that point is to get you know advertising in one way or another.
Right.
So that'll be a while before we flip that switch because then we have to figure out who our audience is and what kind of product
Okay.
would be effective to point in their direction. Um, uh, but right now it's operating as a mission. Almost what do you call that? Not charitable, almost as if it were a religious org. You ever heard of missions like for churches? You're Latino, you
Yeah.
should be.
Yeah.
You're probably Catholic,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
So it's
Catholic. Well, I
almost
was
in a
raised
sense.
Catholic.
Yeah, I figured you're Latino. So was
Yeah.
well, I'm not Latino. I'm Catholic. So
Yeah.
it's almost mission work right now. We do it for free. It's on our own dime. We're putting all our money into it.
Yeah.
If we can, we'll spend at least a couple years pushing it hard, traveling. COVID's really put a damper in it. COVID, we can't have events or things like that or gatherings. So it's a very interesting tour. It's more of a branding and marketing tour because we really can't reach out to groups and have events.
Yeah. No, I can see that.
But luckily, we live in the age of social media, so we can still put all the content out for free and
For
just
sure.
try and reach as many people as we can.
Why did you think about 100% dad? Like, why not 100% mom or parenting, or why, what is it that, what do you think about, like?
Well, mostly because I can't speak from the mom angle, and moms have a ton of support. Moms have a
Yeah,
ton of resources. They have
I
a ton
agree
of
with that.
a sisterhood there. Dads haven't. Although it's I don't know if it's because I'm in the space now or if it's just the timing of it. But I'm noticing a whole lot more.
Yeah,
The more as more time goes by, the dads are starting to get that bond and that support system built in. And I think the decades and decades of people kind of shitting on dads for a while is finally starting to boomerang and go the other way again, where they're realizing that is in fact important, incredibly important in the home. But we've got, like I said, a few generations to kind of correct because we've got a lot of, you know, goofball dads. I think they're just there for comedic effect. Sports obsessed dads, lazy wolves. We've got a lot of that just from being shoved aside for so many generations. Now that's what they've seen their
yeah,
dad. That's what they've seen on movies and entertainment
yeah.
and just culture in general.
Right,
Um,
right.
and you kind of talked. I caught a little whiff of something you said about what the view of maybe testosterone or manliness is versus being a father. And I genuinely think it's both. I think it's important to kind of embrace testosterone and be a man and do man things. And
Yeah,
I'm 100% okay and they encourage camping and hunting and if you want to drink hard liquor.
right.
The grow the beard out, those kind of things, throw a hatchet and hit the target, that all that kind of stuff
Yeah,
is great. And I don't think
for
that should
sure.
be crapped on at all. But then also be there for your family and be a leader in the home and be a source of wisdom, which I think has been long missing,
Yeah.
and maybe less jokes and less punchlines.
No, yeah, I totally agree with you with that, where you everything that you just said, with moms having a lot of support. There I feel like there needs to be more support for dads, and also like you, I've seen more support as I am kind of going into this field. But there just needs to be more. There needs to be more. There needs to be like a movement of really, like dads, like you said, embracing their masculinity, and then embracing all the things that sometimes we seen as a feminine trait, which is empathizing with your kids, listening to your kids, having a good relationship with your significant other, like just being in tune with our emotions, right? A lot of times, like I watched the movie. I can't remember the movie. I think I'm not sure if you watched The Mask We're Forced to Wear or something like that. It's on Netflix, and it talks about how men are raised a certain way where we tend to not be in touch with our emotions by the age of 8 or 9, and then what happens is this what we think a man is um, can prevent us from having those healthy relationships with our significant other, or with even with other friends that are men, right? Just having a connection with them. We think that where that can be gay, or things like that, but it's like, no, we just need friends that we can hang around with, do manly things and support each other, be with our kids, and raise our kids in that way as well. So yeah, man, I think we kind of have a similar mindset in that sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, pride for men is very real.
Definitely.
The need for independence and to do it on our own is very real. Testosterone is certainly very real. Uh, what else? You just mentioned something else that was good. Oh, and
I think just being in tune with their emotions and being able to show that.
yeah, I was trying to think of a way to phrase that, because certainly, you think of masculinity in a sense of you're able to push down emotions. You're able to really, and for guys, we're really good at compartmentalizing. So maybe it's not that we're pushing them down; it's that we can just shove it over here while we focus on the important thing at the moment. But maybe never going back to readdress it. Um, uh, but you definitely see a lot of that, and that's why I think dads are hard to reach as well, because you try to tell some guy that he's doing it wrong or that there's a better way, and I mean, with fatherhood, that's a tough subject. I mean, it's hard enough to tell him he's mowing his lawn wrong, or there's a better way to mow his lawn. I mean, sometimes it's hard to tell guys that
Yeah.
that there's a better way. We're stubborn and rigid, and we have our ways, and we like our ways, and
Yeah.
we think they're good. And so, I think those are real challenges in the space.
Yeah, I think is the inability to feel vulnerable, right? Like vulnerability is so important for us to grow. Like just because you tell me, that there's a better way, it, kind of like you have to be vulnerable to accept that, right? Like, okay, yeah, maybe I am doing it wrong, or I am, I can find a better way. But sometimes we feel that if we are vulnerable or we kind of accept help, is a sign of weakness, right? You're not
So
man.
I'm not sure I agree 100% on vulnerable being the word. Humbleness, I would agree with, or to be able to accept someone else's opinion, or be able to accept that maybe you're not 100% right.
Mm-hmm.
Vulnerable, I just feel like comes from so if somebody else hears that, is going to come from a point of weakness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I feel like that word vulnerability is kind of linked to weakness, but I feel like it shouldn't.
Well, I
You
think it's
know,
defined as weakness, is it not?
it can. There's a different in a
I'm thinking like
way.
in war terms right now. Like if I'm going to attack a fort, what's its vulnerability? What's its weakness?
Mhm.
So I'm just thinking from that. I've never looked at the word vulnerable in a dictionary.
Yeah,
Um, I just think in context of how it's used,
yeah.
we're sitting there saying weakness. Where's the point we can, we can break through?
Okay.
Um,
I
that
see. Yeah, I
that's
see
why
what
I
you're
think more
saying. I
humbleness
see what you're
is
saying. So what I mean by vulnerability is coming from a I guess emotional intelligence, uh, kind of like being able to open up, right? Open up to whatever you're going through in that
Okay.
sense. Um, the way that I see it, I'm not sure if you're familiar with a psychologist called, her name is Brene Brown. She talks about vulnerability, and she talks about how vulnerability can be a way of being, courage, a sign of courage,
Okay.
because so that's
I see where you're
the
going with
kind of
that because, like in a relationship, your wife, like letting her into things that maybe you wouldn't open up to other people about.
exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So like sometimes we feel that being vulnerable or like opening up for whatever certain topics, it
Mm,
can be a sign of unmanliness or weakness and stuff like that, and that
sure.
prevents us to create that connection with our significant other, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's where I'm coming from. So it's kind of, I feel like it was a little bit complicated, but yeah, I see your point as well, where vulnerability does seem like a sign of weakness, but I'm trying to kind of, I guess, use it in a different context.
Sure. Sure. Okay. And I've said that a few times now, where I think careers need to be sacrificed a little bit more. It needs to be spoken a little bit more to say that uh, uh, than to what's actually happened. Because there are a lot of dads that think they're making a necessary sacrifice to provide for their family, but in reality, they are providing for their family. They've even provided for the future, and now it's more about ego and the need to build, which 100% understand because I'm that guy. Like I
Yeah.
want to build the biggest thing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a very what's the best way to say that? It's tough to hold back that natural persona of wanting to build something because it's better for your family.
Yeah.
I need to find a way to phrase that a little bit better. I'm getting tongue tied on it. Um, but the
Okay.
ability to hold back your career on purpose and to fight that urge to build, 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 and risk, risk, risk. Uh, to kind of sit back and watch other people do it's super frustrating. I mean, it was for me. Like we purposely held ourselves back, and
Yeah.
still do to this day, just because I get to spend a ridiculous amount of time with my kids. And I know
Yeah.
when my youngest is 4. So when he's 18, that's 14 years, I'm 33. So I'll be like 48 when he's out of the house. My gosh, I still have so much time. And, I've already
Yeah.
built a good now, but that's when I can go free and just go crazy. And then, as they get into their teenage years, it certainly opens up a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we certainly intentionally hold back. And I think it's hard because then you watch everyone else that has your ideas and your drive doing it and blowing past you. And you
Right.
just have to kind of sit there and, restructure, I guess, the conversation saying my family and being like a whole, complete, tight family is more important
Yeah.
than having the $100 million a year business with 400 employees.
Right.
So
No.
instead, we have the 3 employee business, and everybody else, quote unquote, everybody else is blown past us in size,
Yeah.
and we're just
Yeah.
this little cockroach of a company.
Yeah.
Um, but we have a great family.
No. I mean, yeah. I mean, what's the value on that? Like having a healthy, good family. Like, is that worth like whatever the business is worth? I think that we have to kind of put that in perspective, right? Sometimes, and
Sure.
I that's awesome. I love the way that you think about that, and I wanted to ask you like, what strategies or what ways did you kind of what do you use to find this balance, or just to like kind of like you said hold yourself back, or when is it okay to risk, when is it just okay to kind of just hang out for a little bit?
So one of the things that helped me from growing insanely big is the fact that we don't borrow money, and we made that decision after we started the business. Because when we started borrowing, we got into a lot of trouble. Um, And then we got in so much trouble that we said we're just never going to do it again.
Okay.
That helped in the business we were in, which is coffee distribution, vending machines, that kind of stuff. If I got big accounts, I had to lay out a lot of cash, which every other company in our position would finance that equipment. You know, they would
Right.
finance their truck, they would finance their equipment, and those are all upfront costs to acquire the customer. You know, if I
Right.
get a downtown tower in Los Angeles and I've got the contract to do it, you know, I've got to buy some 100, 200 machines at $1,000 a pop, maybe coffee machines.
Mm-hmm.
So that's,
Mm-hmm.
you know, $100,000, $200,000 worth of equipment for one customer. So, you know, there were a lot of those we had to say no to, which we certainly could have taken on, but it would have
Mm-hmm.
required debt. Would have required more risk and a whole lot of time and effort to get that thing going. I mean,
I see what
that's a lot of back end office work. That's a lot of physical labor work. It's a lot of hiring and managing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the things that genuinely helped us from growing too big. And it's super frustrating because you watch everyone else around you get bigger and bigger and bigger and take on those.
Yeah.
But you see competitors then take that client and
Yeah.
direct a good client. You know, it's probably, you know, at the same time, we you know, we were probably so real case study in our industry. About an hour and a half away from us, there was another competitor. They were about 10, 12 times the size of us, a lot bigger. I certainly wanted to be that size, and they took on those big accounts that we were saying no to. And you know, when we started having real discussions with the owners of that company, we realized we, like the owner, me, am actually making more money than that owner, and he's struggling under debt and getting bridge loans, and you know, his business was in a sense sinking. He ended up selling and just breaking even.
So your profit, you were more profitable than that big business was your
Sure,
competitor.
because they're very debt laden. Because you know they had what 10, 15 trucks, but you know 10, 15 trucks with $1,000 a month or $1,500 a month payments on. You know, almost every piece of equipment was leveraged and had payments on it.
Right. Right.
And when things like 2008 happened and clients just disappeared, you still had payments.
You still had the equipment.
You
You
didn't do anything wrong. You still have payments. And you know, the same thing is coming around now in that industry of COVID. We've sold now, so we're not in it. But you know, the guys with COVID, no one did anything wrong. None of those operators did anything wrong. They have payments. They knew those customers were going to be around. They were big customers.
Yeah.
You know, so they bought all the machines. But hey, now those call centers and those insurance offices and all those big buildings downtown are empty. No one saw that coming.
Yeah, exactly.
No one saw that coming. No one predicted it, but those payments are still due. I mean, if you think those banks aren't expecting payment on those, you know, you're wrong. You know, all those exemptions and you know they're not doing foreclosures and things like that. That all applies to residential. It doesn't apply to commercial.
Right.
And so when you've got bigger warehouses to handle the inventory load, when you've got all that, all those trucks with payments, when you've got all that personnel that you have to pay, you know, that can come crashing down on you fast. And like what happened in 08 and 09 and what's happening now, those things were not foreseen. Like you
for sure.
So with that, we had the comfort of sleeping nicely and having a great family life. But the constant frustration from me, the business owner who always wanted to grow and get bigger, purposely holding ourselves back. So some of it, the financial aspect really helped guide us there. Is if I had been more risk adverse or maybe better at managing debt, then maybe I would have gone that way and we wouldn't be able to have this success right now. But because I was able to sacrifice the growth and just suck it up, it allowed me to have more family time. It allowed me to gain this perspective. Wow, that actually ended up being better. At the same time, when we started the business, every time I started a business, family didn't see me a lot. I mean, I did put in the hours and the time and make those sacrifices, and that was understood as a family. You know, my wife understood where I was.
Right.
You know, and we owned our own businesses. We're starting our own business, so it was a lot of like, you know, bootstrapping and just a lot of long hours on my part, late at night, things like that. So we
Hmm.
did have the advantage of, mom and kids could come to the office and visit. It's not like I was completely gone. Um, but sometimes you do need, I mean, sometimes you just need to work when when you have a career change, when you're starting a new business, when you've got, a new big client or a new, section of the business happening, or just you lose a big client, whatever it is. Sometimes you need to be there. And sometimes you have to sacrifice
Definitely.
your family time to take care of those things, but it's not forever. Right.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's not, and maybe it's a month, maybe it's 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. But if you look up and it's been 5 years,
Yeah. And your kids
that,
already like almost teenagers. You're like, oh
then,
dang,
then
where?
then that was too long.
Yeah.
Um, and that's you see that a lot,
Yeah.
and that's
For
in the
sure.
corporate world as well. It's not just in the small business world that's in the corporate world of just climbing that corporate ladder. And
Climbing that ladder. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I had a mentor of mine say, this is back in the '70s, but you know, every Friday night he was packing a suitcase and his wife was yelling at him because he needed to spend more time at home and the kids, and he was just pursuing the corporate career.
You're just trying to get to the
Because
top.
well, and in sales you had to, and
Hmm.
sometimes in a corporate environment, you had to travel, is what I was saying.
Mm,
So he had to fly out to a different city to, wine and dine and client, or
right.
establish a relationship. Um, and and there's a lot of pressures there. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think the ability to say no to that and still manage your career properly, I guess, is
Yeah.
it's a talent certainly, because you don't
Yeah.
want to sit there and I just know in the corporate world, uh, if you sit still too long in a position, they start overlooking. So there
Yeah.
is a balance that has to be had there, because in some positions, the big corporate, or top 500, top 1,000 companies, it's kind of this constant culture of, if you're doing good, you're going to get promoted, and if you're not being
Right.
promoted, then you'll probably never get promoted because
Yeah.
you've
You're
been
gonna stay
overlooked,
in the same.
or you're not a team player, or things like that. So I think to be able to manage that in a way, and every situation is going to be different, but uh, I'd probably have to talk to somebody in corporate to get a better understanding of how that goes, because you do want
Yeah.
to still elevate your career and take care of your family. You just got to be able to do both. But
Exactly.
if you're always choosing one over the other, I think that's where the problems lie.
Yeah.
And so I'm not 100% sure how to do that in the corporate world, just because I don't know that many corporate guys
Yeah.
that are doing that. How to hold back and still be there for your family. It probably depends on the company.
No. Yeah. And then another question that I had that you kind of brought to my attention was, um, you were doing all your business, and like you said, you have to sometimes, you're starting a business, you have to put in the long hours and stuff like that. How were you able to still put in that family bonding time? Was there strategies that you used to kind of just make sure that you check in with your kids every day? And like, how much did your family support kind of help you, make feel good that you're still providing as a father, and you're taking care of your family?
Well, those first couple of years, I was not doing a good job providing. I mean, it was, so, starting a business. It took 3 times as long as we thought it would. It took 3 times as much money as it thought it would. You know, when I started the first one, Levi was like 6 months old, so it's not like he remembers any of it. I think I still had time for family. So when we started that business, my office was in the house, and our warehouse was the garage. So I was still at home.
Okay.
Because I remember some of the problems being, I had to get out of there because Levi, my 6 months old or a year old, however he wasn't understanding that dad's at work. And so it was
Mm,
constantly, well, I know dad's through that door trying to. So from that perspective, my late hours were at home, and all my calls were at home and things like that. Um, trying to think, I'm trying to put myself in my shoes from when I finally got out of there, because we went from that to a storage unit. So I was able to go beyond my garage to a storage unit. and we got a bigger storage unit. And then we moved to a warehouse with its own office. That was probably 2012. And I think I was there for about a year. And I think by then we had some income going in. I think we had just hired our first person. And so I think I was home for dinner most of the time. I think there were nights or days, things like that, when I had to work late. And then that was just a call home. But I think I was usually there for dinner most of the time. I'll still probably put in 60, 70-hour weeks, maybe 80-hour weeks. It was certainly 6 days a week at least. I'm an early morning kind of guy. I'd rather get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and get to the office and just be there 2, 3, 4 hours ahead of everybody else. Because that's when I work best, and then be able to still go home at like 5 or 6 at night.
So you're putting in work.
Yeah. So I never minded. If I was going to make a sacrifice, I would sacrifice my sleep in my morning, get up way early, and go in. And then the kids wouldn't see me for breakfast, but I was usually home for dinner because by then I was starving. So I mean, there were
wanted good food too.
Yeah, there were certainly days and times where I was going early and they're late, and then going home, getting a few hours of sleep, and going back in early.
Right.
But they didn't last forever. I think the longest one was maybe 3 weeks, where I genuinely was burning the candle at both ends, because we just lost a key person who was stealing from us.
Oh man!
And I realized all the work he was doing was a huge cluster fudge, and just everything was wrong. We had just launched a new business he was in charge of, and just every single thing he touched was wrong and bad. And I mean, I couldn't sleep if I wanted to. I was just kind of sitting there at night like, fudge.
Yeah, your mind is going 100 miles an hour.
I mean, I was probably at work. I mean, I was probably working 20-hour days for probably about 2 weeks, with no other option, because I was the end all be all, because we just had to fix everything in the computer systems, on the customer sites, and ordering. I mean, it was just a gigantic cluster. That's probably the hardest I've ever. And then, I mean, Ryan, my wife, and the kids just knew, because that was more recently. That was about 2 or 3 years ago. They just knew this was a serious situation, and family time just isn't important, right? We'll make it on family time later, but like the business is in like a critical stage, and the savior needs to save it. So,
right.
So there was
no put in the work to do that.
I mean, I didn't have a meal with family for a few weeks there, and I mean, I'm not sure the kids even saw me for a few weeks, because I was genuinely at work so much, and like it wouldn't even. It's not like I was just sitting there on the office doing nothing, where they could come visit me and we could have a nice little dinner. I mean, it was just like go. That's probably the most stressed I've ever been in business, because we were big enough to have a lot to lose, but still small enough to where I had to be super hands-on. But yeah, that was less fun. Honestly, the truth is I've never been consistent on it, but that's also my personality. I'm very ADD, so it's not like I found a system that worked perfectly. I got up at this time and I made sure I said this to my kid and saw them this amount of times a week. It just never happened that way. It was just it was constantly a long-term goal that I have a good family and that I have a good business, and so I made sure both were attended to, and whatever was in a more critical stage. And if the business was doing good, I could spend more time at home. If the business needed to take a leap to the next level, or needed more of my attention, then that's where we focus the energies. I was ADD enough to make that happen, and then not greedy enough to be that gung ho on business to where I was never satisfied.
You mentioning, I made it home to dinner most of the time. I would be there for dinner. So it seems like that dinner time was would you say that was a critical, like, important time where, kind of like it's like a family time, and you needed to kind of just try to make it there, even if you were busy, kind of put some stuff for tomorrow if you needed to, and then kind of make it there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as a general rule of thumb, I would rather be home for dinner because we sat at home as a family. Ryan would usually try and time dinners up for when I was there, or my arrival or something like that. And so, she'd call and ask when I'm going to be home because I was never home at the same time. Sometimes I was there at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and anywhere in
Right.
between. So she would always kind of call, and
Okay.
that was probably one of our many, many fights of why can't you just come home at the same time all the time? I'm just not that way.
Man.
But we've always been very focused on eating as a family. We like food, so we genuinely enjoy eating. But it's also our time to spend time as a family.
Right.
There's no TVs going on, things like that. We've always tried to have that as like the not necessarily what the family's built around, but kind of.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of conversations around the dinner table that may not be discussed if you don't have that that time as a family every day to kind of just bond and check in on each other. Whatever you need to deal, it's not just eating dinner, right? It's solving problems, hearing people out, planning, right? If you're going to plan a vacation or plan something else, it's usually done at the dinner table. But what I feel like what a lot of times is, now that tradition or that I don't even know what it's like, skill, I don't know what it is, it's not as important, or people just don't do it as much. It's like a lost tradition, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we both came from families where we did that. I came from a split home, divorced home, but my mom we always sat down together and ate dinner. It wasn't super formal or anything like that. Like we ate at the table that was inside the kitchen. Like they had another nicer living room that was only for like, special occasions.
Mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
so we just it was like nothing special. We just sat down at the table in the kitchen, and in their house, they usually had a TV going, like a small one. But we still sat down as a family and ate as a family. And I know at my wife's house, they always sat down and ate as a family. With the exception of Friday nights, they always had their pizza and a movie night. So they would eat in front of the TV and watch, and eat pizza. But
Mm-hmm.
so it wasn't something like we super sought out and was super intentional. It was just kind of what we both knew. We both kind of were raised
Mm-hmm.
decent. Oh, I can't say that was like a perceived skill or anything. It's just what we knew, grew up with,
Yeah.
and it works out well. It genuinely,
No.
it does help with bonding, and I feel like we'd be almost more disconnected because it's actually starting to happen now. Because now that we're in the RV, we can't sit down all together at the same time. Like that little RV
Mm.
table, it fits 4 people, but you're crammed in there,
Mm.
and there's 5 of us. So we're in a
Yeah,
situation now where we kind of eat in shifts. If the weather's nice, we can sit outside, like the outside picnic table, things like that, and then we actually
mm-hmm.
get to sit down and eat together. But
Yeah.
I'm not as worried about it because now we kind of like everyone gets a plate and goes sits wherever, and sometimes some people go outside, some people will be inside, and our
Yeah.
kitchen and cooking utensils are small, so food's not always ready at the same time. So we have to do like smaller batches where we can feed 3 people now and then 2 people later. But the truth is, we spend so much time together right now that I'm not
Yeah.
worried about that affecting our family. When we go back home, it's probably going to
Yeah.
be a weird moment to go back to sitting at a table all
Mm-hmm.
together. But
Mm-hmm.
we spend such a ridiculous amount of time together, 24/7, 365, that I know that's not as
Yeah.
important of a thing as it used to
No, yeah. I mean, yeah, it makes sense. You guys are spending so much time together. You have a lot of these bonding times. So, like, if you're not eating together, you might have an opportunity to kind of talk to each other, bond throughout the day, right? But if it's like, typical family where dad might doing a business or mom is working as well, right? And this is the only time that they have to connect and, like kind of check in with each other, then that becomes a very critical moment in their daily life. That for me, my dad would be watching TV, my mom would be at the table, I would be sometimes watching TV. So I didn't have that as growing up, right? Like, be more intentional about it. Like, it sounds silly to just say like, yeah, just have dinner together, but
It's place for
yeah,
real conversation
yeah.
and real bonding, and it's just I genuinely enjoy that time. So I don't think I'd ever want to give that up. So
Do you plan like where you're going next, or do you just like say, hey, let's look at a map, let's go where we want to go? Like, how do
a
you
little bit
guys
of
like?
both. A little bit of both. It's planned to the extent that we have to have places like scheduled ahead to go, and some busier places you need to reserve in advance.
Okay.
Um, so we're scheduled probably about a month to 2 months in advance. In fact, we actually list them on our website. So there's a part on our website where it kind of our itinerary is laid out.
Is
Um,
telling you where you're gonna go. Okay.
mhm. um, and then at the same point, there's been times where we change it because we realize we're going to be near something that would be cool to go. Like we were in Colorado and we were going over to Salt Lake City, and we
Hmm.
realized Moab, Utah was right in between us. And we just didn't, for some reason, didn't realize it between
Right.
or before. And so at the last second, we just cut out some of our reservation in Salt Lake City and just headed over to Moab, Utah because we could.
Okay.
Um, so there's a little bit of spontaneity, but we do have somewhat of a rhythm of where we're going. Like we're crossing Montana right now,
Hmm.
heading into North Dakota, going across North Dakota into Minnesota, going all the way across Minnesota to Devil's Kettle because the kids want to see Devil's Kettle because they had it in some book or YouTube video, things that shouldn't
Mm.
exist. So, and we can do that. So why not? So we're going up there, and then we'll go back down across Minnesota to South Dakota to
Yeah.
Nebraska. I think we're going to shoot over to Denver, Colorado to see some family again. And then we're heading south because by then it'll be pretty wintry. And then we'll be in Texas and
Yeah.
Arizona, New Mexico for the winter. And then up the West Coast after things thaw out. So like spring, summer. And then we'll head back over to the Mid East and East
Okay.
Coast.
So you kind of
Late.
have a plan for like,
Mhm.
in the future, next couple months or even next year, right?
Yep, we had a wonderfully detailed plan where we spent a lot of time planning it, and
Hmm.
then COVID happened, and COVID ruined everything because we were originally supposed to go up the east coast of the U.S. into Canada, across Canada, and come back in through Michigan and do like the Midwest states. And we had everything planned and thought out and spent a lot of time researching it. And then
Hmm.
Canadian borders closed. The East Coast became the worst place to be.
Yeah.
And so we just scrambled and headed out to the Midwest because we really thought this would all be done by July.
Right.
And so we figured we'd go to wide open spaces, big national parks, and
Yeah.
not see anybody, things like that. And then because that part of the country still wasn't shut down because there's so few people. Um, uh, and now, so we ended up it's quasi. Sometimes we're scrambling, making it up, and now we've got a little bit more of a rhythm to it, but it's kind of messed
Yeah.
us up because now we've gone from Florida to the middle of the country. We're doing like this ribbon loop back down, and then we're going to go up the West Coast, and then we'll just have to kind of shoot back across all the things we've already seen and done, and just drive past it all to get back
Yeah.
over to the East.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and if COVID's still going on, who knows? It's really ruined our ability to, like I said, have events and gather and
Right.
have a more effective tour.
No, yeah. I mean, definitely, definitely. But so now that you're doing this, what have you seen any benefits for your family? Like, what is it? Some of the things that you see that you're gonna take away from this experience that you're going through.
So we're only 3 months in. So I think at the end of 2 years we're going to have learned a
Mm.
lot. We are on top of each other. I mean, we are. This is about as big of a camper as you can get, and
Mm.
it fully stretched out. It's about 420 square foot. So
Yeah.
it's not large.
Right.
Uh, So we are always on top of each other. There is no, like, if you're in an argument with somebody, there's really no escaping. There's no going somewhere.
Mm,
We have the truck that's pulling the fifth wheel. So it's not like, two vehicles can go two different ways.
right.
So we're together all the time, um, which I genuinely enjoy. But we're just now coming out of it feels like a vacation, and it's starting to be like everyday life. So we're still adapting to
Okay.
just this severe shortage of space, and really just things like you want to, like, I have my phone in my wallet. There's just genuinely no place that's acceptable to put down my phone and wallet. I mean, because our kitchen counter is so utilitarian
Right. You're using
that,
it for everything.
yeah, if I put that there, then someone else is moving it because they want to go make a snack, or our
Yeah.
dining room table is it's part dining room table, it's part office for the laptops, it's part homeschool table, it's part
Right.
drawing and recreation table, it's part just catches stuff when we come into the RV after we've been out
Yeah.
for a while. So, I mean,
Yeah.
everything is so multi-use, and we don't have like the perfect rhythm. Um,
Hmm.
but really, and what it's going to come down to is just embracing the chaos and just realizing that there is no real genuine organization that you can adapt to. There's no cleanliness is a whole different ball game. So like, what's I'm a little bit more of a clean freak. So like, I like things clean,
Hmm.
and at home they always stay clean, and here you just realize it's never going to be clean. There's just no way.
Mm, yeah.
Things are
Very.
always going to be out. Things are always going to be out, and so it it's weird. It takes some getting used to, that's for sure. And so we're still in the stages of adapting. So I'm not going to profess that
Mm,
I have any great educational tidbits that I've learned. I, I'll probably have those at the end of 2 years, but not at the, what are we, 3 or 4 month mark? Somewhere.
okay.
So, but we do get to do a lot of stuff, and we are very active.
Okay. So yeah, that's
We're on,
interesting that you said you're kind of.
yeah, we're on bike rides and hikes. I mean, nearly daily. Um, uh, because when you're in 420 square feet, you get out and do stuff. So,
Right. No, yeah, that's interesting. Like, you said that you kind of are coming off a vacation, right? Kind of feels like a vacation, but now you're kind of transitioning into like, okay, this is where we're gonna be living and going through, for the next whatever year and a half or whatever your plan is to do it. So it's gonna be interesting to see like towards the end, like all your journey and everything. I mean, there's so many memories that you guys are gonna create as a family, so many
oh, that's for
places that
sure.
you've gone through.
And I will say, I am, and if that this will be a good tidbit for any parent. Um, the video camera as much as you can. I love the fact that we are documenting, and have a camera rolling a lot of times, like pretty much everywhere we go. Every new trail in national park, we bring a camera with us. Um, and I mean, we go back and we watch our videos that we've already made, uh, because we were doing so much, and it's like so many things in such short amount of time that we've already kind of forgotten some of the things we did like 8 weeks ago. Like, so we have to watch a video and we're like, oh yeah, I forgot we did that. But I love the fact that we have those, and we're going to be able to look back on those, and especially in 10, 20 years, and that the kids are going to be able to see
Oh,
them. Um, and it almost makes me kind of regret that, there are no videos of me growing. I mean,
mm,
they just didn't exist. We didn't have video cameras.
yeah.
And that's just something like, now that I'm becoming an older person, man, that'd be so cool to see me as a kid,
Imagine as a
with my
kid.
family.
Yeah.
Um, and my wife's family, they did have cameras, and so there is a lot of footage of her. And so, like, the kids,
Hmm.
like our kids, like to watch footage of my wife when she was a little girl, dancing
Yeah.
or pretending to be a newscaster, or things like that, or on a hike. Um, and so the fact that we're going to have all that is great. And we're also going a step and beyond and editing it down, so it's not like these long, boring videos. Like, it's kind of cut down
Yeah.
into like a little bit easier to watch and things like that.
Right. Yeah. No.
But I think
No,
if there's something other parents could do is, man, just break out that camera and record video, because I was never that way, and now that we're doing it, I'm so thankful that we are.
no.
Because I've always been like, live in the moment and not through, don't look at a lens and things like that. But and we don't record the entire time, but like there's certain sections, take pictures, and we videotape when we get to like a
Mhm.
waterfall or something like that. We'll break out the camera, we'll
Right.
videotape kids about it, talk about it, how was the hike, things like that.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm glad we do that. Even though it's a little weird sometimes to be recorded that much.
No, yeah, but like you said, this is something that it's gonna be for them, right? Like when they get older, they're gonna be able to even show their significant other, like, hey, look, this is what I was doing with my dad when I was whatever, and it's just a treasure, It's
Well,
such.
it's kind of like the dinner table we were talking about earlier. Now you can
Mhm.
kind of make the TV that you love so much and make that the bonding force of, all right, now we're not watching, who got kicked off the island on Survivor. We can just sit there and
Mhm.
watch some of our home movies and just reminisce about all these things we've done as a family. Reminisce about
Yeah.
that hike we did. Reminisce about how cute you were when you were 4, and
Hmm.
things like
Hmm.
that. But that can be a bonding agent for the family as well.
No,
Um,
for sure.
yeah,
No, yeah, definitely. Just popping up those old home movies and kind of like looking at the differences. Hey, you remember you had this, or you broke, a bone in here, or
exactly.
whatever, whatever was happening at that moment, or even at that time. Hey, remember we were in the pandemic and this is what was going on, but
Yeah.
now it's like we're at a different point in our lives. So, no, that's great. I mean, but that's just something that.
And that's something any family can do. I mean, you can videotape your walk around the neighborhood, or
Right.
the time the kid decided to do the lemonade stand out front, or
Yeah.
the new shoes, or the hand me down bike you just got, first time riding it, things like that. You know, it's not like you have to travel the country to do that. There's
Right.
so many opportunities, and
No, for sure. And just kind of like,
I, I think it's worthwhile.
no, for sure. And then you kind of just put that thought in my mind because I use my cell phone to record, but it's running out of space now because I record so much. I need to invest in a camera and then a memory card and make sure that I'm able to have that.
Yeah, throw it on external drive and get. There's plenty of cheap free editing softwares, but then you can kind of start to you learn how to store all that footage and kind of make it by month and label it correctly, and store it by year and month and folders, so that way it doesn't get lost in just
Yeah, easy to
a
find.
cluster fudge of data. Um, but then kind of go through it, and you can start to edit it down and get rid of the crap. A basic editing software will give you the ability to cut, paste it together,
Yeah.
maybe add some background music, and that way the videos are a little bit more palatable to watch.
Yeah, for
Who
sure.
knows? That might even turn into a little hobby you do. Instead of watching TV at night, after the kids go to bed, to maybe a little way to earn some extra side bucks and do it for other families, or
Yeah.
who knows, a full blown career, because we know videos aren't going anywhere. They're only going to get
Yeah.
bigger. So,
No, for sure.
I do think that is a helpful aspect of being able to watch them, because you don't want to sit there and watch boring, shaky footage, like you're watching the Blair Witch Project, because
Yeah.
then it's not fun to watch. But if mom or dad can sit down and take the last 10 videos we made of things we did, and
Hmm.
then chop them into little 30-second, 45-second pieces of kids laughing and running, and then stitch them all together in a basic video editing software,
Yeah.
then you have a nice little 5-minute video that's fun to watch, and you can pop
Yeah.
in anytime, and your neighbors don't mind watching it because it's not super boring. Um,
Exactly.
and like I said,
Yeah.
I think that can create real family bonding time, and it does.
No, yeah, I can definitely see that. I can definitely see that, and I do that with some of our things, and even my daughter. She's only 3.5 years old, but she enjoys watching herself or watching us do things like, oh, that was me doing, going to the
Yeah,
waterfall or going here, and it's like, yeah, that like you said, it creates a
E-
a bonding
even simple
moment.
things like even simple things like the next time you bake cupcakes, and
Yeah,
letting her join in.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
they love to watch themselves do things.
Yeah, that's funny. All right, man. Well, I think we've been here for like a couple hours now. So
Hours. Yep.
yeah, so I mean, and we had a lot of, I mean, I had a really good time talking to you, a lot of great conversations, and I'm just looking forward to seeing your journey and seeing, what that creates within your family. And man, I support 100%, Dad, and your message that you put out. So I
I
appreciate
appreciate it.
you. Yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate you what you're doing, because it takes a lot of courage for someone to say, you know what, I'm gonna pack everything, sell my business, and go travel in a RV
Yeah.
and with my family. So,
Yeah.
man,
Well, thank you.
kudos to you. More power to you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to just kind of staying in touch and see where you're going next.
Perfect. All right. Definitely stay in touch.